The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you with the help of our sponsor, AWeber, the world's leading small business email marketing and automation service provider. Since 1998, AWeber has helped more than 1 million small businesses and entrepreneurs through its suite of web-based email marketing, automation tools, and education. AWeber, the best option when it comes to marketing your business. The podcast is also brought to you by the Alternative Board. Since 1989, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has been one of the leading peer advisory and business coaching organizations for independent business owners and CEOs across the world. By facilitating peer advisory boards, private one-on-one coaching, and strategic planning services, TAB helps business owners improve their businesses in ways that change their lives. And be sure to connect with our affiliate sponsor, GSM Growth Agency. They're boosting e-commerce businesses to 6 and 7 figures in revenue and cover everything from ads and social media influencers to making your website better. GSM Growth Agency focuses on taking businesses from startup success to bigger success, going above and beyond to make sure growth sticks around. They're all about cool ideas, lasting partnerships, and making your mark in the e-commerce world. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services.
Just imagine being an investor, investing in an early stage startup. Like, this is risky business. Most don't work out. And if they've done it a bit, they know.
Yeah.
They know that it's like they've been in the past and I met people who had what sounded like a great idea and they sounded competent and then it just fizzled out into nothing almost immediately.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Beinhacker, and I think last week I had a coast to coast guest also. It's early in the morning. So Sondre is going to come on from San Francisco. We're going to talk about all his background, why Combinator, all kind of cool stuff. So if you are listening on your favorite podcast directory, leave us a 5-star review whenever you can. And if you're watching us on YouTube, like the channel, subscribe, and keep following us so we can keep connecting with cool guys like Sondre. So let's get on with the show.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhacker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests, where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode.
Hello, my name is Sondre Rush, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of SafetyWing. And SafetyWing, we offer health insurance for digital nomads and remote teams, although that is just on our journey to build what we think of as a global social safety net for the first country on the internet. And it's an honor to be here.
All right, Sondre, thanks for your patience there. Okay, you can hear me clearly? We're all good?
Yeah, we're all good. I was such a funny intro. I love that intro.
You love that? Okay, so I want to be a little professional, with the whole thing. So why don't we go back and talk about your background? Because you're doing this thing. We're going to talk about Y Combinator, but you've been through it twice, and you're really going the entrepreneur startup route, which I think a lot of people want to hear about, and they don't really know how to do that kind of stuff. So maybe we go back about your training, your background, I don't know, your schooling, right. And we get into what you did in your first round with your other company.
So as a teenager, I knew I wanted to start a startup. I don't know exactly how I picked that up. Somewhere on the internet, I just picked up that. And I even had a little project, I remember when I was like 14, where I tried to set up web hosting website. Right. I set up a server in my room and try to sort of sell spaces for that. Offered 24/7 customer service on the kind of mobile phone I got for Christmas, my first one. And then I went to college, studied economics. I was interested in that for a while. Society, that was kind of the job I had, was policy advisor for the government of Norway.
Okay.
So a very different one, but I grew frustrated with working in the government. It's a huge organization. So it's kind of like the biggest organizations. Everything just moves so slowly, and it's hard to even imagine change happening over a lifetime.
Yeah, government's very slow when it comes to change. They're not exactly light on their feet. So you were raised and born and grew up in Norway, and so that's how then you got involved in government there, or you took a government job.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. And then this, I was just looking in a way, how can I start a startup? And I had no idea how to do it. This project from earlier wasn't a real startup; it was just a website. But so eventually I had an idea. A friend of mine who had later taken a job, I think McKinsey, came to lunch, and then we talked over lunch. We're like, what are we doing here? Shouldn't we really be running a startup in Silicon Valley? And do you have any ideas? And that was really the genesis. And then we were like, I have this idea. And then we just started working on it, kind of almost 99% expecting failure, which was really good for us because we were so reckless with how fast we were moving in the beginning. Which I much later learned that's actually the top reason these things never get off the ground.
Right.
That when you know nothing, which we do, it's like it's not just that you don't know what to do. You don't know. It's not just that you don't know how to do certain things. You don't know what to do. So 90%, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, 90% of the activities we did, we could have just not done, and the company would have been
the same result. Right.
Same results.
Right. Well, because you're just testing. Yeah, nobody teaching anything. You're throwing things against the wall, right? And just seeing what works. And right. Well, that's why a lot of people. So that's where, the theme of the podcast. I mean, you basically succeeded by accident, not because you eventually figured it out. A lot of people give up. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's a bunch of very lucky accidents. And Dalton Caldwell in one of the Y Combinator partners has this line about making luck. And the way you make your luck is just you try a lot of times. Right? You just roll that dice enough times. Right. Yeah, you're going to get those sixes.
Eventually. And, so what was that business idea with your friend from McKinsey?
Yeah. So that was called SuperSide. It still is it's a real company, I think. Okay. It's run by my co-founder still. They have 700 employees.
Oh, wow. Okay. And that's the one that went through Y Combinator the first time, right?
Yes. So we started out, we went through this flurry of trying everything. We had a few lucky breaks. And then I knew about Y Combinator because someone had, I picked it up from early days, actually. I was following Hacker News and Y Combinator early on.
Right, and, sure. Yeah, it's all over. Y Combinator is an incubator or an accelerator?
Accelerator. I mean, it's the original one. So both those words were kind of invented.
Right, but you have to be more than just, hey, I have an idea and I want to start that. You got to be doing something, don't you? Or no? Could you be totally a startup?
You could be an idea.
Okay.
It could be an idea. So they invest. Now they invest quite a lot. Back then it was less. Now I think it's $500,000. No, I would say a good half are idea stage or pre-revenue. So.
Well, but what would you say the business was? SuperSide or SuperSide?
SuperSide. Okay. SuperSide is kind of a freelancer platform.
Okay.
But the difference from the other ones is it's teams of designers doing projects for big enterprises.
Got it. Like graphic designers or programmers or whatever.
Correct. Graphic designers, graphic designers and video designers, motion graphics, all kinds of designers.
And creative people, right?
Yeah. And so it's and the typical customer, you'll see on the website, the biggest one is Amazon, for example, having like lots of teams who they kind of use to scale up and down, like as kind of like an extra team to get design done. That's that company.
Yeah,
and,
because if you're a big corporation, you don't want to hire one designer. Like that doesn't help you, and you're going to put your whole team together. This does it for you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good concept.
So that was and that was such a learning experience going through the first one. We applied, by the way, several times, 3 times. It was on the third time we applied to Y Combinator we got in. That was because someone told me, doing that application form is a great way to think through your idea.
Yeah, sure. It's like working through a business plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they have some good questions. And so that was actually the top motivation. I know the third time we got in, we were 100% sure we weren't getting, which was actually very fortunate because I wrote so short things in the application form. And I later realized that comes across as incredibly confident.
Oh, interesting. Well, but also the first 2 times, I mean, it must be so oversubscribed, right? They must get so many applications and eventually you get there. Like, you don't get into the marathon the first time either. You got to keep applying and so forth. So I guess it was a combination of how many times you did it and also getting better at the application, I guess.
Yeah. And then we kind of got into this. So we got in, and that's like putting a rocket booster. You also see a lot of other entrepreneurs who, it's not that they know what they're doing, but the average quality is high. So you were like, oh, I didn't know we were kind of amateurs when it came to customer service or the way our website looked or some of these things, and we're like, oh, right, let's quickly
expose you to the world, and you see what the benchmark is, and what the standards are, and what other people are doing, and because if not, it's all a black box to you. You just don't know.
Exactly. So that was a wonderful experience, and then we kind of got into the venture. It's kind of track, and so we raised seed, Series A, etc., and a couple of years later started SafetyWing, which was a bit of a spin-off then from SuperSide, because that was a freelancer platform. We observed that these freelancers didn't have benefits.
Got it.
And because the internet economy is global, but these the benefits and social safety nets are local. So we decided to build that ourselves, and eventually then left to form SafetyWing, and did Y Combinator again.
Right.
And then, because I found it so useful as a way to kind of kick you into speed.
Right, of course, because you're around really smart people. They give you money, you said, to work on things?
Yep.
Yeah, so that gets you started. Did it give you an advantage going in the second time because they knew you had been there before?
Yes.
It did, okay.
In all venture, I found second-time founders do have an advantage, not just like a kind of like an obvious one, like you literally know investors, but but in the sense that it's looked at as a very, very, very useful experience. And having done it twice, it's totally correct.
Right.
So much time, for example, I wasted to figure out how to learn to basically do accounting myself the first time around, which is like, I can't just describe what a waste of time that is.
Right, all the bookkeeping and everything like that.
It has nothing to do with the success of the company.
No.
And it's a total waste of time. And there were tons of other things like that I didn't understand was just a waste of time.
Right. And a waste of time, meaning that you shouldn't be doing. It's not that you don't do your accounting or your bookkeeping, know your financials, but it should be another professional doing that, not you. That's not a terrible waste of your time.
Yeah. And it's an afterthought because a lot of the ththings that you might optimize for is only relevant if you succeed, if you get any customers.
Of course. Right. Yeah.
So it has this like bizarre phenomenon where you literally won't do many of these things unless you get any customers. So first make a product, then get any customers, and then you can think about administrating all your customers.
Right. I understand what you're saying. So you would do pro formas trying to figure out the pricing and this and that, but in terms of administering the business, there's nothing to administer if you don't have any customers. Like you're just pretending.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And this is such a funny. This is actually a core error. Is this like when people they solve problems before they exist in their company? I also see this as a cause of some of the co-founder breakups I've seen early on. Is that I'm like, you guys you haven't sold one thing yet.
Right.
And like you're arguing about this like future pie that only exists if you guys figure it out. Like if you
Right.
guys can
Like, what are you
cooperate.
arguing about? Right.
What are you arguing about? But yeah, it's like it becomes real, and then they start solving all these problems that doesn't exist. But you got to do one thing at a time, and job number one is to make a product people want.
Yeah. No, I think it's also human nature. People want to like be busy. Like in sales, they do that all the time. They make busy work. They should be out selling. They should be out promoting their product and marketing it. But instead, they're designing things. They're doing their spreadsheets. They're making flyers. They're doing an agreement between, hey, this is how we'll split this up. And there's nothing to split up. Like you said, like get out there, sell your product, figure it out. And that other stuff will become necessary when it's relevant.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the two things that they say is like make your product and talk to customers, i.e. sales, and more or less everything else is a distraction,
Right.
and you shouldn't be doing it. And unless like you should look back on your week, and at least 80% of your time is you can confidently say that's one or the other. You're
Right.
either talking to a customer, literally,
Yeah.
potential one, or you're improving your product, literally.
Right. Yeah, because you're wasting your time. You're building systems. You're doing things. You're probably going to be wrong about whatever happens with the product, what people want, what the marketplace looks like as you explore it and start to talk to customers and get them to use the product and see if whatever you're doing is wrong. It probably will be. I'm sure with SuperSide, you discovered things as to how companies use teams and what they were looking for and how the teams work together. I don't know. There must have been things that you figured out, right? How did you even find the community? You had to start getting people to sign up, kind of like an Upwork or a freelancer type of thing.
Yeah. That was an early problem we had to solve. So before we had that solved, we would source freelancers on other sites.
Yeah, just approach them and say, "Hey, we're doing this. Would you join us?" Type of thing.
Yeah, you were talking like the very early days. We would actually hire them and pay them on the platform, so we wouldn't poach them immediately. But we would essentially just like in the beginning it was literally Upwork. We had to stop that because Upwork basically back then like half the company were lawyers and they were suing.
Right. You're poaching our people. But I mean, their leverage is on their people. You're not doing anything wrong. You don't have a contract with Upwork, but the Upwork people on the website, they're getting screwed, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the US, just suing someone, even if it's so-called frivolous, is actually a way to bother a startup quite a bit.
Yeah.
And they were doing that at the time. So in the beginning, we would just get in a project, literally hire for it, and then do it.
Oh, so you would find, because there's two customers, right? There's the business that's hiring your team, and then there's the team. So you got two sides. So you would find the business and then get the project and then fill the need.
Yes.
It's like a temp agent, almost like a placement agency kind of.
Well, now I'm talking about the bootstrap phase, right?
Right,
like
the early days, yeah.
When there was one time we just solved that problem, and the problem became the opposite. It was just we found this like network of job sites we posted to all over the world, and suddenly that problem was solved, and we were getting, and to this day, like already that early time, I think I remember like hundreds of thousands of applications, and so we just solved that problem perpetually. That was
for freelancers.
For freelancers.
Yeah, there's so many out there. It's ridiculous.
The number of applications we get were off the charts. And so that was never a problem again after that. And now and then our problem was selecting, like, what do we do with these 100,000 applications? And we're 3 people. So we had to build like these automated way to filter the applications and curate. And so that was sort of the next.
And you
stage.
build the team, like, so you would say, hey, Mitch, we evaluated your thing. We want to put you on this team, and that's how you would do it. And then, or you would come on based on the project. Yeah,
because in some sense, SuperSide is. And by the way, just to say again, this is my previous company right
now.
You
don't own it anymore, right?
Shareholder, and I'm obviously talked to my former co-founder, but I'm not. I don't do it day to day. So they may have changed things, but
we can have him on the show. We do a separate episode.
Yeah. So what is that's what we would do. We would curate. We would kind of hire them a little bit like you hire regular employees in trials and a lot of testing, because the idea was it's not just a platform where it's kind of like a free for all, but it's curated,
right?
And it's actually also teams. So in some sense, it's more like if you were to say like what's the kind of pre-software thing we were just like recreating.
Yeah.
I would say it's actually more like agencies, because, in agency, like you had, like you go to an ad agency and they can do a project for you, and
right.
they put like a little project manager on it and some people, and they do something for you. And
right.
That's often very good, but it's crazy expensive.
Right.
And so that's really what we were doing. We were taking that, but it's fully softwareized. So that means it can scale much more. It's like, but it is teams, always teams executing a project,
right?
And but using like our software, we built so much.
Yeah. So then when did you exit that? Because you said Y Combinator for that was in 2016, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So 2018 or 2017, end of 2017. Well, I didn't fully exit, but that's when I started working on SafetyWing, I did exit the day-to-day working.
You just still owned. You still owned.
Yeah,
just not anymore.
Correct. So, and then I still own as well. But we did have like some exit in a later round, No, so that's when we started SafetyWing. This time I knew much more we were doing. I knew that the only thing that mattered in the beginning was the team, the pitch deck, and the product, and then getting customers after that. But that's like the first things, and so it could be so much more effective. So that's back to the point about the investors are right to give a benefit to second-time founders because
you've been through it. Yeah. So once you go, you were able to raise capital much easier, I guess, once you come out of Y Combinator, right? Because it gives you.
Yeah, but it's still painfully hard.
Yeah.
It still is painfully hard. It still is like, no.
Right.
But it's much easier than impossible, which is what it a little bit felt like pre-Y Combinator.
That's a hell of a statement. Much easier than impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I think people have the impression that like you come up with this great idea and then you find an angel investor or a VC or whatever, and they're going to give you all this money. Like it's easy. But I mean, I hear stories about even very successful companies that they've had 300, 400, 500 meetings with investors and had to start out with a very large cap table to start, with all these people putting money. And it's always, it doesn't matter how good your idea is. It's always difficult. These guys all want, they want more than you want to give them, and they want to put in less than you want. And it's hard, right? I mean, you must take a lot of meetings, even for both companies.
Yeah. I mean, if you've done sales, the idea of funnels, and they taught this as Y Combinator as well, and this was a really useful thing to know.
Mm-hmm.
What they said, it was something like, even for a good company, I think they said that it's kind of like average from meeting to close on that angel round is 10%. Which means you got to have 50 real meetings,
right,
to get those 5 that are typically what a small angel round consists of.
Right.
Small round consists of, and that was so useful because then I know what the top of funnel was, and that was to get those 50 meetings.
Right,
and that's no easy feat to get those 50 meetings. But what you saw people who don't know how to do this is that they will literally get like 3 meetings and then be distraught.
Yeah,
that those 3 didn't say yes. But see, they don't even do that when the companies are amazing.
Right. But how many angel investors you got to approach just to get the 50 meetings? There must be a statistic on that. A lot,
yeah,
right?
That true. I don't know that number.
You just kept talking to people till you got a meeting.
Well, that's the fortunate thing once you've been in Y Combinator is that
they're more willing to give you a meeting. Yeah. So, but that 5, does that mean that those 5 are investing in the company, or those 5 are just seriously considering being?
No, that's investing in the company. Yeah.
Okay. So it's like a 10-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've just used that on the later rounds. It's close enough.
Right. Right. And
uh,
it doesn't get you frustrated because you can't have 3 meetings and then raise money. But you're right. I talk to companies all the time and they're like, I had this meeting with this guy. It was a great meeting. He's interested in putting in money. I think we can raise capital. I'm like, yeah, but that's one person. Like there's all kinds. You don't know how many people this person's talking to and what they're looking to do. And then they never end up pulling the trigger. So,
yeah. And then it comes back to like what helps in fundraising and why running a process is so important is because one of the things that investors look for is not consciously, I think unconsciously, maybe they would be able to tell that they look for this unconsciously, but it's basically some variant of confidence. Because you can imagine someone who seems like they're massively unconfident, they don't believe in it themselves.
Right.
See, they know much more than you. So that's a good signal, actually. And so you want to make sure that you at least don't have that kind of desperation with that has nothing to do with your company, but has to do with your fundraising.
Right. Yeah, because ultimately, aren't they really just investing in you at that stage? I mean, you have no product; it's just a concept. You're trying to prove your concept. If they're not right, if they're not of confidence in you, it doesn't matter how good the product is because a lot of it's execution.
Sure.
Yeah.
Although you end up talking about the product, like
of course, but if you don't seem confident, they're going to be like, "Well, how's he going to push this thing and make it work?"
No, it's like, can this be huge, and are you able to do it?
Right.
But my point was also that you have to find these 50 meetings and do them very close together. That takes away that desperation, which is deadly, I think, in fundraising.
Yeah,
it's so important to do it on purpose because this is probably true in like dating as well. I mean, I'm married now, but it's probably some truth to this that you sort of, if you're like, oh, this is like the one, girl I talked to this year,
right?
It's gonna seem like it's gonna be much harder to move on if it's a no, and so it's the same with fundraising. The trick is to get a lot of these meetings on top of each other.
Right.
And like you literally have to go to the next meeting.
Right. And I think it builds your confidence and you get better at it. Right. It is like dating, right? So you date a lot, go on a lot of dates. You're going to get better at dating and picking people and figuring people out. And
exactly. It's a learning curve. So it's doubly good. And it's the funnel thing. Like you're not tricking yourself with the funnel logic.
Right.
So no, it really is the way to do it.
Right. No, there's no question. You can get really caught up very quickly and enamored by a great meeting you had that you think is a great meeting, and then and then it falls apart or something happens, and they just I had a client that was talking to I guess it was a family office or something like that, a family office, something, and it was going great, and they were talking to some other people, but they kind of dropped those meetings and whatever. And something happened in the family's life. I don't know if it was my client. I don't think it was, but it just, took all of his, it just really affected him emotionally. Like it really made him just really sad and, disappointed and frustrated is a better word, right? He was really frustrated with the whole process of, we put in all this time and we knew they were on board and what happened. And now we got to find another one. I'm like, you got to talk to a lot of people before somebody's willing to part with their money. A lot of it's timing, So
100%. And just imagine being an investor, investing in an early stage startup. Like this is risky business. Most don't work out. And if they've done it a bit, they know.
Yeah.
They know that it's like they've been in the past and I met people who had what sounded like a great idea and they sounded competent and then it just fizzled out into nothing almost immediately.
Yeah.
And the money was completely down the drain. So you have to understand the reference class you find yourself in. And
absolutely.
And when the problem they're trying to solve, it really has to be stellar.
Right. And people have to care about it just because of the problem. Right? Maybe you thought everybody needed health insurance, but then maybe you find out from the freelancers they don't really care. They don't have access to health insurance. So, but obviously they did. But
I mean, if you are smart and determined and honest. The earliest round, friends and family is helpful because they will know more about you, right? So it's a little bit easier for them. If you're not honest, right, then that's not going to help you because they know. but that's because later on you have a little bit more evidence. The first round is really the hardest, and I was maybe Series A because then the money is getting serious.
All right. Why don't we take a break for some commercials, a couple of minutes, and I'll mute you. I'll turn my mic down, and then we'll come back and talk more about SafetyWing and what you're doing. I'd like to hear more about if you've had any other ideas that didn't work, how you work through those ideas. Like if you come up with, how do you test an idea? I think that's one of the problems that people face. But let's do that after the commercial. We'll come back.
All right.
Here's a word from our sponsors. Looking to market and grow your business? Or perhaps you're just getting started and want to hit the ground running? AWeber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation of your business. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, AWeber gives you tools and integrations that make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use all their tools to promote the podcast and market our law firm. AWeber, the best alternative for online marketing. For over 30 years, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has built a thriving community of forward-thinking CEOs and business owners who want to radically improve their companies. Through unique combinations of one-on-one business coaching, participation in monthly TAB board meetings with other non-competing owners, a suite of strategic tools, and customized strategic planning workshops, TAB membership can deliver greater strength to your business and a better work-life balance for you and your family. All packaged in a streamlined and affordable service that the people at TAB invite you to try risk-free. Are you struggling with managing advertising due to a lack of time or expertise? Perhaps you're facing challenges in scaling ads for your store. Are you feeling lost when strategies have no success? GSM Growth Agency is your reliable partner in overcoming these business challenges. Feel the impact of collaborating with a team dedicated not only to short-term goals, but also to building long-term partnerships and achieving sustained success. Embark on an exciting journey to redefine the possibilities of e-commerce and create a legacy of unparalleled excellence. Take decisive action now. Follow their link in the show notes to receive a complimentary audit of your Shopify store conducted by a GSM expert. Propel your e-commerce game to new heights with GSM Growth Agency. Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show.
Are you back? I have no idea what happened with that commercial. I just stopped. So I got to figure that out next. Okay, so every once in a while there's glitches with this platform. So strange. Where were we? Okay, so we were talking before about what was it? Testing ideas, I think.
Yeah, testing ideas.
Which I think is a huge problem. Like people don't really. They fall in love with that idea. They think it's great. They do some research. They see how they can make the product. They don't really talk to a lot of customers, potential customers, and work through the idea, by making just like raising money, right? They don't make enough sales pitches and get turned down by enough people to figure things out.
Yeah. So I do have some. None of them kind of made their way all the way to being a fully formed startup. They kind of like died in the pre-formation stage, but they went far enough so that I was able to learn something from it. So the first is that, I mentioned when I was 14, this web hosting thing. And back then, this is like end of a very long time ago. It's 1999, 2000. And back then, so this is way before like professional hosting services exist. And this sort of like micro hosting thing is all over. So you would go on forums and someone would say, hey, I need this and this hosting. And you would sort of bid. And that's one way you got customers. And what the lesson from that is that when you just sell the same as everyone, and this is like really a top lesson, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Right.
This is the one thing, is that if you sell the same as everyone else, it's not easy, it's hard. It's because, like it's almost impossible to be heard.
No differentiation, right?
No differentiation. So you want to do something unique. And I have actually done that one more time later. That was almost an attempt. It was sort of a services booking platform like Uber for kind of home services thing. And it was during a time when many companies were doing that, like
like Angie's List type of a thing.
I don't know enough about that.
It was just like a directory of like home improvement people and handy people, and you could find your local plumber, electrician, or whatever.
Oh yeah. No, I mean taking it one step further, like Uber. So it was an Uber for X company, right? So it's like imagine Agent's List, except you could like book it like Uber.
Like on an app or something.
Yeah, exactly. So that was not a terrible idea, but one thing that was very weak about that idea was the fact that it was during a time where tons of people were doing variants of it. And this is just a recipe for failure.
Right.
I remember when we started SafetyWing, someone told me about this, like go on Crunchbase and search for like traffic parking apps. And there were 800 parking apps registered on Crunchbase from that year. And I can tell you like almost all of them failed.
Yeah, you're talking about the ones where you can book like Spot Hero, where you can book something in the city, that type of thing. There were 800 companies trying to fight in that marketplace.
2017, 2017 started 800 parking apps. So massively competitive. And the way people end up there is that they kind of like, they want to start a startup. They kind of just glance out and they're like, kind of almost like, that looks like a startup idea.
Right. Like that's a problem that people need fixing, which makes sense, right? You look around and you say, well, finding parking is a nightmare.
Right.
But they don't realize the amount of noise and competition in the industry.
Yeah. And what was the case in both of these mentioned, by the way, is that not only are they way high competition, they're also a little bit of tar pits, which is like this recent way of describing it that I found was funny. So tar pits are like this. It's like, it looks like water, but it's tar and it's in the desert, and the animal goes and drinks it
and starts sinking and dies or whatever.
And then they die. Yeah. And then someone else comes, still looks super refreshing. And
it's like a mirage, right? It makes you think that it's this and it's really not.
Yeah. There's something about the idea that all remains attractive. And both of these we've talked about, I actually think are, especially the services, Uber for home services thing, because I've seen so many companies fail at it. And to this day, none of them made it. Like none of them made it to the point where I'm using one of them,
right? Which
is incredible given how much capital and effort have gone into succeeding with it. There's something about it that is a little bit of a tar pit. So that was one thing I did. And I don't know if it was anything about evaluating ideas here. I tried it, but this was early on.
But it doesn't mean that there shouldn't be competition, but it means that if there's 800 companies trying to get off the ground, maybe you ought to think about not running down that road, right?
Totally.
Too much competition.
Totally. And the solution is often just to try to think for yourself instead of pattern matching, like this looks like a startup idea. Kind of have to think it through. And you know, we did that in a big way once I got to SafetyWing, because then I'd learned this lesson.
Right.
And so there we have this like peculiar situation in SafetyWing, which is that even years in, there's scarcely a copycat. So with my previous company, SuperSide, we launched on TechCrunch, and a month later, we counted 27 copycats, many of which had just copied the text on the website and everything and just set it up.
Literally, just scrape the whole website.
Yeah. So, and it doesn't matter, by the way, so you shouldn't worry about them, but that's because they all fail. With SafetyWing, that did not happen, and that is because insurance is so overregulated.
Right. So it scares people away, right? They don't.
It's also impossible. It's so hard. That's the hardest part about getting to where we are. I mean, now we're past that threshold, but it's really difficult. So I think we have like 2 copycats, even though like it's a successful company, and so that's
you don't have just regulators in different states in the United. You have regulators around the world you got to deal with. It just depends on the country, right? I mean, yeah. So that's a hard thing to maneuver.
And but another, reason we have so few is that we came up with this idea in a novel way. Like, it didn't look like a startup idea at the time because we didn't arrive at it that way. We arrived at it through sort of. Well, okay. So here's how I think about selecting ideas, and it sounds a bit far-fetched. Just warning. Trigger warning. It's far-fetched. But I mean, I'll just say it. Well, okay. Let me start with what I put in the mix. That is the least far-fetched.
Okay.
I think any reasonable person can nod and say that doesn't sound crazy.
Crazy, right?
And that's just economics. It's just is there like an underlying economic benefit here? So I studied economics, and so I learned a lot about that. And I'm looking for those. It's not that I'm primarily motivated by those, but if there's one of those there as well. And what do I mean by an economic benefit? So with SuperSide, what I just observed was agencies in Norway take like $300, $500 an hour.
Right.
And similar quality on Upwork takes like $20, $30 an hour.
Right. It's like 10 times.
So that's a big economic difference.
Right. Sure. It's leverage.
It means I can mess this up in a big way and still like have a great deal.
Right.
Okay. So that's one example. With another one I had with SuperSide was, this is a bit more of a complicated economic one, but it's just like why do companies exist? Like, why do you have so many people have so many things as employees instead of buying services?
Right.
And there is this one guy who made a model about it, and he said, it's because it's the transaction cost. It's so much hassle to buy the services, and if it wasn't so much of a hassle, it was like smooth as, then a lot of people would do it. And so that was another one that we used. So I kind of like knew I had these like two kind of hard economic things,
right,
that would help us.
Right.
It would help us succeed.
Right.
Okay, so that's the most reasonable filtering I do. It's just I look for these economics.
Yeah. It's like you're looking for like financial leverage, basically, right? Because like not only is it 10 to 1 in terms of the cost of the team, that kind of creative stuff, you cannot always make the team busy all the time. So you have these projects that go up and down, and they can expand and contract through your organization, but it's much harder to do when you have employees. You got to fire them and hire them. I mean, they got to go get another job. So
exactly,
they'll be gone.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So that's
it's a benefit, right? And a main selling point today, right? So both of these things are, if you go to the website, you'll find these two as main selling points. Yeah. Why? Well, because these sort of economic things, they tend to be real. They don't go away easily.
No. And you got CEOs that are looking at bottom lines, and that's real dollars. Sure. That makes sense. Right.
Yeah. So that's one, have an economic reason, have economics on your side.
Right.
At least one or two points. That's helpful. And then another one that I do, and now we're getting into this like far-fetched territory, but I'll try to say it in a bit.
Okay.
I really like this idea of the frontier, right? So like, imagine that you see a trend, and already there I have to qualify a real trend, because the world is full of like fads.
Fads, right? Fads and trends are different, right? Exactly.
Yeah, and it takes some, and I don't have like a quick to tell, but I'm talking about the real ones, and you just gotta be able to tell. And I do think it's possible, but
right, something you think is a trend is really just a fad, and you got to be able to differentiate between the two, right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
okay, let's assume that you get past that part.
So you take a real trend, and you just let that play out,
right?
And then in the future, some problem is going to appear because of this trend. Okay, this is kind of what we're doing with SafetyWing, and to some degree with SuperSide. And then you're solving that problem. See what I mean?
Right. If you can identify the trend.
Yeah, if you can identify the trend, it may not even be certainly a big problem. Maybe not even a problem at all. But there's something that's kind of obvious down the line that will appear with this trend, And so if you see, with SafetyWing and working online, right? So back in 2016, when we first had the idea in 2016 for SafetyWing, by the way. But I was busy with SuperSide.
Now,
So
how did you have the idea? People were asking, like, how do I get benefits? Can I get benefits through this? Is that why?
We did do surveys of our own freelancers and asked them top problems, and this kind of income variability, not having benefits, kept coming to the
kept coming up. Okay, makes sense.
We were also ourselves in the bucket. Okay, so we knew about it personally, and right. Also just through reasoning. Like, we were in this economy a lot, and we just understood what was going on here. Like, look, they're all working on the internet. Right. Nothing is built for international individuals, services. So right. So that's the other one. You just take that, like some people working on the internet, which then is small, and it doesn't feel like a problem. You never heard in 2016 everyone talk about remote work or online freelancing not having benefits being a problem. So it's not like you've heard about it. It's an extrapolation.
Right.
But much more people do this. This looks like the kind of thing that more people will do in the future. This is a real trend. If you look at the curve, it's smooth since 2000s, and it doesn't feel faddy. It does feel like fashion. It feels like, just adopting some new technology that works.
Right.
And so, what if everyone were to do that? Then no one has benefits. That doesn't make any. No one has a social safety net. That's not going to be the future. That's a problem. Right.
Yeah.
And so, by solving that, then we start working on something which is a future problem, which is a bit of a risk because you might be too early. But it also ensures that you're not going to have competitors. So that's one thing I do.
Hard to enter. And you didn't know what was coming down the road, that you would accelerate the work from home, remote work, economy, and the way companies hire people now that changed with the pandemic. I mean, that was just I don't want to call it a benefit. A lot of people died, but it was kind of a silver lining for a business like yours, where the whole industry kind of moved forward like 5 to 10 years. They would have taken people to get to the point where these companies are comfortable with tons of remote work. Now it's just acceptable, And the remote economy is really taken off. People want to be freelancers. They want to be able to go around and do things.
And then can I throw in one more far-fetched filter I put on there? Okay, so one more far-fetched filter I put on there, which I do think is good, is sort of idealism. And the idea here is, imagine that you build your thing.
Okay.
In what way is that like very, kind of socially or like societally very good? Yeah. And if you can think of some that is like really compelling, that's going to be like most of what you talk about. And I think it also prevents one of the things that will prevent you, because I think it's almost like the world, there are immune systems in the world. So if something is like bad, it's like cynical in some ways, something comes out, like you're going to have this counter force you're always going to be fighting against. So
meaning like the business idea should be redeeming in some regard to society. So it has a social, like there's a reason that people do it beyond just saving money, that they're like, well, we're saving money and we're helping the planet, or we're saving money and we're supporting these people. Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
It does make a lot of sense.
It's a good story.
And, anyway, the meta point here is have multiple, right? Because if you have here, like if you have two economics, one,
right.
You have one trend and you have one social reason.
Yeah. No, then you got a formula.
You got that's a good armor, right? So you're starting to get a pretty good defense here that this is a good idea.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's one of the reasons from when I talked to you the first time we talked, I was looking forward to you coming on the show, because, I think a lot of people, like they just kind of throw caution to the wind and they try to start a business, right? And they don't really know what to do. They've never written a business plan. I'm sure for why, I don't know where you got that skill, but for Y Combinator, you had to write a business plan, right? I mean, you got to submit all that stuff to support your idea, right? So people don't even like work through their idea on paper, let alone talking to people about it. And I think these kind of conversations about metrics that you should use, which you just gave us, the ones that you use, really can improve people's chances of success, or help them to either adjust their idea or maybe just abandon their idea. Like maybe just because it's an idea and you think it's a problem, and maybe it is a problem, doesn't mean it should be a business. Like it's not always the case, right? Because it may not work. on large scale or whatever. So I think all those tools are, that's good advice. It really is good advice for people. And I guess you apply that to everything that you do. Do you have any other, SafetyWings, you raised a fair amount of money for SafetyWing. It's doing well. I guess it's growing. Are you working? You got other thing, not that you can necessarily share, but you have other ideas now that you're cooking up that you're working on?
Well, I'm going to see SafetyWing through to the end. SafetyWing, we raised over $50 million and
your end, but SafetyWing doesn't have to end. There's always going to be new entrants into the freelancer.
Yeah. No. When I say the end, I actually mean the product, the V1 of the product. That's a unique thing with SafetyWing is that we're still not there. But
you're still on version 1? Okay.
Yeah. We're certainly on version 1 on like the health insurance and everything, but the country and the internet, we still don't have version 1. So but other kind of like ideas going in the back of my head. One thing that I find endearing about our time is that you can start new cities. That's like one very fringe early thing that, if I weren't running SafetyWing, I would certainly think about that. Back in the day, there used to be like cities that were started like all the time in the US. Like someone founded Los Angeles and were like putting out ads in the newspaper in New York, like come to Los Angeles.
Right. Yeah. No, they're expanding frontiers and they're moving. Have you seen ads for that thing in I don't know if it's Dubai or Saudi Arabia, Neom or
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy stuff.
Hilarious. Yeah.
But may not be so crazy. It looks like Star Wars, but maybe in 20 or 30 years it won't be so crazy.
I think it is less crazy today than has been in a long time that you can make new cities. And part of that is because we have this changing kind of job layer. So, remote work here is the key change.
Live factor. Anywhere and work, right?
Yep. So you have a lot more people being mobile because, in the olden days, 20 years ago, then you lived somewhere because you had a job there. So it's not like you're seeing some ad to move to Los Angeles and you're like, I'm going to take that and just live in Los Angeles without a job. It's not going to work. So, but that's now different. So you can actually now start new towns and cities, and you're seeing the early projects there. This is like, I think, a very early trend, but I think that's cool. I would love to see new cities being built. I wonder what cities built in this era would look like. Nothing.
They were planned properly from the beginning with technology. There are cities like in the United States that have really been booming because people have moved there and they can work from it. So like Nashville's been big. Austin, Texas has been big. Atlanta's developed, but at one point everybody was moving there. So you get a lot of people that are leaving these bigger cities knowing that they don't have to be in New York, and they don't have to be in Los Angeles or San Francisco. It hurts the big cities. So, but those haven't been planned, like they already existed. They're just growing. When you see, I think there was a point where there were more sky cranes in Nashville for building than anywhere else in the world except like Dubai at one point.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
the building that was going on, and it's crazy. But yeah, you're right. If you could start with dirt and completely plan a city properly, it would be interesting to see. But is that a business or is that more of a urban planning type of a thing?
I think it can be a business. You would have to. It's similar to SafetyWing. SafetyWing has this character of like having to backfill the business model, which you have to do on these like very ambitious projects. Anyway, I think the same with building a city. Like, the end state is, like you said, is that even business? But the beginning, you just have to think of something clever, right? You just have to find like, well, we have to, we're going to make the first sale at some point, and that's going to be something.
Right.
In the city, it is pretty clear what you're selling. You're selling land, right? That has increased value from what you bought it for.
I guess that's how towns and cities developed anyway, right? They were farming communities, or they were industrial communities, or they had business, and without business and enterprise doesn't exist. And a bank opens, and then a gas station gets put in, and it develops, and that's what happens.
Yeah. And so what you do, actually, now that we're making the business here on the fly here, but in some sense, it's like you just get the land real cheap, and then you paint a vision for what this could be,
Right.
And then the hard part is to get the first people, right? It's the first people to go, and that probably needs a lot of thought, right? Because there's not a city there then yet. So that maybe that can be part of your pitch, but the main part has to be some other reason that they're going there, and that so yeah, it's an interesting
quality of life, economic opportunity. But I mean, look, I looked at that NEOM thing. I don't know why I would go there. I mean, it's great, and it's not built yet, right? I mean, they're just showing these visions of how they build these cities and what they're going to do, and the whole thing. You got to be really an early adapter to go.
Plus NEOM is unique because they have funding.
Yeah, they have obviously a lot of funding, and they're in the desert basically, right?
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah.
You'll see that stuff in urban planning, I think, as you go. But I don't think government is really good at urban planning. Like, there are examples of it in some countries, but for the most part, government's not efficient enough to do these kind of things. It almost has to be commercial.
It has to be commercial, and this, Dubai, and you could say how good are they really? But the reason that works at all is it's because they kind of they're kind of because it's a monarchy essentially. Like, that's actually a monarchy.
They have control over everything.
Yeah. They have a CEO.
Yeah.
And but when it comes to urban planning but like you can never imagine a city being founded the way that a regular city is run, because that's a committee of people who aren't founders, right? And this kind of like imagine any startup being formed by like a committee who's very interested in making rules. Is like it's never going to work. Like,
all self-interested. Yeah. No. Look, I do a lot of land use for people locally. If you want to get something done for your building, commercial, residential, whatever, you have to go in front of a board of lay people who have no business background, have no planning experience. They got appointed because the mayor is their friend, or they're involved in the town or whatever, and there's no qualification. So you get weird results with people say, I don't want that. Wait a second, that's my backyard, whatever. But ultimately, it may be good for the community or profitable or other things. There's no vision or anything.
Yeah, so maybe later you make that, but to found a city, you need builders, you need a visionary, you need a salespeople. You don't need there's nothing to fight over, right? The city doesn't exist yet.
Bring a couple of large corporations that are going to bring their population there to live, but they don't have to do that. Yeah, it's interesting. We could probably have a whole nother show on that. Yeah. Sondre, so what's a good way for people to like interact with you, to learn about? I mean, SafetyWing must have a website. I assume you're on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Can go
on LinkedIn. The website is safetywing.com. If you are digital nomad planning to live abroad for a bit, that's definitely the best solution. If you have a remote team, people in different countries, contractors or whatever, you want to offer them benefits, that's another. That's a great thing to do.
You mentioned the word digital nomad. We didn't really talk about that. I had somebody else on the podcast who wrote a book, how to be a digital nomad, how to live.
Wait, who was that?
What's her name? Hold on, I can tell you. Where's my list? I'll give you real quick. Here we go. It was Katie. No, not Katie. Where's her name? Caroline, Adam.
That's right. I'll find it in
the episode is out already, I believe. And, but yeah, she wrote a book on it, how to live life as a digital nomad.
Interesting. Yeah.
And, I think Ashley or something was her name. But I'll email it to you so you can, I know, it's Kayla Ihrig.
Okay.
Ihrig, and her husband's from, ironically, her husband's from Norway, and she's from the United States, and they basically live out of a suitcase, and they get their mail at their parents' house. They pick it up every once in a while, and they, 3 months here, 6 months there, they have kids, and they just live that way. So yeah, she's a writer too, so it's easy for her to live on the road, do whatever she wants to do. So, all right, I can't thank you enough. I know it's early. You probably got a big, busy day out in San Francisco. I'd like to follow SafetyWing and stay in touch and see what happens. And hopefully this is real valuable to people.
Yeah. Thanks, Mitch. Enjoy
All
the
right.
conversation.
Sounds good. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhacker and produced by Beinhacker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.